Oh, it's almost 2 o'clock in the morning here. And I am absolutely exhausted. Getting my store ready for our inspections. On top of the fact that my wife and myself are kind of on shifts, watching to make sure that our nearly 2-year-old doesn't decide to escape his crib and go wandering around the house. Now, granted, we did put a baby gate up in front of his doorway to try to stop him, but you'd think that the title's on the line and that kid is climbing the cage like it's nobody's business. Man, I should be proud of him. You know, this guy could be WWE champion one day, but that means that we got to watch, because otherwise he'll end up, downstairs playing in the dishwasher or the dog food, or, it's not like the kid doesn't have toys, but he'll find the things that aren't toys to play with. And speaking of things that aren't toys to be played with, we're here to talk about Warhammer. That's right, these models are miniatures, much more than just action figures. No. They have rules, they have value. And today, the Necrons got their FAQ and errata to the Codex. And for most armies, what was expected was, just some rule clarifications. Small little buff or debuff or just little tweaks or adjustments to better understand some of the rules. But what we got today out of just 4 paragraphs was insane. I came home. I got the notification from a buddy of mine saying, "Hey, did you see the Necron's FAQ and erratas out?" And because I was getting my store ready for the evaluation, I really didn't pay it as much notion. I was like, okay, this is probably just clarify a few things, and I assumed one strat specifically was going to get nerfed, and we'll talk about that. But then I sat down and read it, my jaw just dropped, and if my brain wasn't fried, it was after reading that, because now the door has opened infinitely wide. This is a revolving door that is spinning at 100 miles per hour, and it is just, everything is flowing in, especially with one huge question, errata, and apparently intent behind the way a rule was supposed to be used. Welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation, and today we're going to talk about some Necrons. Then what we're going to talk about is the FAQ and errata that dropped today. We're going to see some point changes probably by the end of this week, but we're just going to talk about the errata and the FAQ. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do. Turn on the bell and get notified on all the content that we bring you here on the channel, including many other factions and the battle reports that we try and put out here weekly. So today we got our FAQ and errata, and I want to see if I can try and get it loaded up over here, but my laptop is not cooperating with me today, but that's okay. We only had 4 specific things to focus on. And the first one that we're going to talk about is the erratas. The first errata was for the Canoptek Court, and that was the stratagem. What's the name of it? I always just call it the Devastating Wound stratagem. Cynosure of Eradication. Because even if my laptop doesn't load up for me to read, we need to read, and if we're going to butcher the names of these stratagems and abilities, we need to butcher them from the book and butcher them properly. So, Cynosure of Eradication. This is the stratagem that allowed you to give dev wounds to a unit that was shooting. Typically right now, it was very common to give it to immortals, who could re-roll failed wounds against units on objective markers, or re-roll ones against units that were in the open. So this would definitely is a powerful ability for the immortals to be able to re-roll and fish into these devastating wounds, and they errated it. Now, I thought, when we looked at this, the fact that this was a battle tactic stratagem that you could get for 0 command points while it was intended to be 2, I thought that was going to be where they targeted the strat to prevent the basically immortals from getting it. Instead, they went after they just basically kiboshed it entirely, and now they've said that it is this specific stratagem is a model to model basis. So you can still use the strat for free on your immortals. However, it is model to model, so the immortals themselves will not gain the devastating wounds. Does this remove the immortals from the Canoptek Court? Does this make them weak? Does this mean you're still not going to run them? I don't think this changes very much. I feel like a lot of people are looking at Plasmancers. I personally run the Chronomancer. This might give more justification into the Chronomancer because now there isn't as much of a heavy overhaul into the devastating wounds. But you're still looking at sustain 2 for rerolls. Either you're proccing on 6s or you're proccing out of 5 up. Either way, you're still looking at a high volume of shooting. Just now, a squad of immortals is not nearly picking up a land raider because that land raider is trying to take an objective. So that is definitely, I anticipated a change. I thought they were going to take it away from the battle tactic to make us have to spend 2 command points every time we wanted to use the strat. That was what I thought was going to happen. But instead, Games Workshop went model to model basis on it. Makes the strat much more difficult to use because it is a 2 command point strat, and there's a lot of other stratagems we want to use. So I feel like this one is going to go to kind of that bottom tier of you're going to know it's there, but using it few and far between. I still think Immortals will find their way into Canoptek Court lists. We might see a little bit of a drive over into the Gauze because of Lethal. That might flip around. I might have to try them out and see if there's a little bit of value out of them there. But having the Tesla and just the volume of hits is still really nice. So it definitely hurts, but I think competitively, all of us who were playing this, who played these armies competitively, I think we kind of felt like something was going to get, an FAQ errata was going to hit that strat and hit that combo. It was a little too much. So next up we have the, what was it called? The, what's the name of this thing? Territorial Obsession. And this was a very minor change. The strat reads that it can only target Lich Guard or Triarch Praetorian units. And what they did was they dropped the Praetorian part and said all Triarch. So what are other Triarchs? So you have the Triarch Stalker, you have the Silent King. I believe he is also Triarch as well. And these are things that now you can target and get an additional command point or additional OC, or if they are a vehicle, you can get additional 3 command points. So things like the Silent King who, oh, nope, the Silent King is not a Triarch. That is crazy. He is not a Triarch. Huh. Vehicle, character, epic, hero, Silent King. So he is not. But we do have the Triarch Stalker, which means that if you have that thing and you have it on an objective marker, I believe it's OC3 generally, so I think we're going to be going up to OC6, OC4. So we would go up to OC7. And then your Praetorians, you could end up getting a higher OC value on them still, as well as the Lich Guard. It's a very useful and very necessary strat for this detachment. Just the fact that they opened it up more to a couple other units, such as the Triarch Stalker. It's nice. Not as linear, but needless to say, it's a very minor change. It almost makes you feel like they just accidentally put Praetorians in there and then went, oh wait, there is no Triarch vehicle. So how do we give this? Well, it should be a Stalker as well. So it's probably just like a misprint in that sense of like Triarch Stalker, Triarch Praetorian. Okay, cool. I think a lot of people kind of figured that way. I know that when Lane and I were discussing it, I said if I ever ran this and I ran a Triarch Stalker, I would definitely consider that the command point to be used for it. But it's better to see that it's an official ruling, because going to a major event and stuff like that, you can't get away with, well, there is no vehicles. Go, okay, well, that's great that there's no Triarch Praetorian vehicle, but that's what the strat says. That's what it targets. Rules as written, it couldn't until now. So that's it for the erratas. Not a big deal. Not a big chunk. Big deal. The definitely the devastating wounds on the mortals, a huge change. But then we get to the FAQ, frequently asked questions, and the first, we're gonna do these in a different order, because the one is where I'm gonna leave the video at an end, because I can't even wrap my head around this one yet. So first of all, the one was the Immortals. And it's actually interesting because Lane and I just had this discussion in our last game. And that is, I'm sorry, not Immortals, Locust Destroyers. And that is the Locust Destroyer's Hardwire for Destruction. So the Hardwire for Destruction ability says each time a ranged attack targets the closest eligible target, you get to reroll hit rolls of 1. If the target of the attack is within range of an objective marker, you can reroll all the hits. So we were in a scenario where we were looking at this, and I was like, well, I get to reroll all hits because you are within range of an objective marker. And then Lane said, well, no, but I'm not but this isn't the closest unit. And it came down to an Overwatch capability. And we kind of went back and forth with it for a second. I was like, well, but and this goes back to like the strategic reserve thing, and how I said that it was one run-on sentence, and so it seems like everything from the paragraph involving reserves, involving units being picked up off the table, and certain rules that don't apply was all coherent in that paragraph, because there was not a period, because we have to go into punctuation to find where the statement finishes and ends. And in here, it is a period between the two abilities. So I said, I believe these are two separate standpoints. Lane was like, I don't think so. I think that is one coherent ability, that it's you target this unit. If it's the closest, you get reroll 1s to hit. If it also happens to be within range of an objective marker, it's 1s. And I said, well, don't you feel like with some abilities that would also be tagged on there to say if that unit also is? So we treated it as the way the FAQ currently states. Didn't help my dice rolls. I rolled 1-6 and then re-rolled an entire pool of dice and rolled another 1-6. But needless to say, that is how it actually works. If the Locust Destroyers choose to shoot at a unit that's within range of an objective marker, regardless of if it is the closest unit or not, they get full re-rolls to hit. And I think this is a very strong question answer. I was looking at these guys and I built the big bricks of them. And after this matchup, I was actually considering reducing them down and going with maybe 2 or 3 man units to bring on from strategic reserve to be able to do pepper objectives, since their damage output is not that good per se. I mean, there is a lot that really falls down the tree as you start rolling the dice. You know, for what there are shots, this, that, and the other, little pieces. But by taking a couple of units of them and having them wander around the field and be able to spray onto an objective, you know, if I, instead of taking 1 6-man brick, if I took 3 2-mans and brought them all on in that same objective and shot at that same objective with all of them, yes, I wouldn't gain the Locust Lord 5-up crit ability because character not joining all of them, but that's still a good volume of shots to re-roll the hits and fish for 6s. Okay, I like that. And now if my opponent wants to answer those, they're going to have to be very particular on how they remove the units. So now seeing that is how that functions starts to make me think, wonder, and contemplate going into that direction, especially for the Hypercrypt Legion. And finally, Hypercrypt Legion. I never in my wildest thought this was actually what Games Workshop intended, But thank you. Thank you for this Christmas present. Thank you for this into the new year. Because I've looked at the Hypercrypt Legion, and I have to say, I actually think that it is a extremely difficult detachment to play. So those who are out there trying it right now and it's not maybe not completely clicking entirely, I would have to say this is actually the abilities are there, but there is going to be a learning curve with this army. We do have more weapons and more teeth than some things like Grey Knights, but Grey Knights have a 2-up save and 2 wounds or more on most of their units. So there's a sense of resilience that a 5-man squad, 1 or 2 models can get out of there and still score secondaries into following turns. Necrons, it's a little different for. Some of the cost, some of the size, but this is and some in the access to deep strike. And so I feel like it's a more difficult detachment to play from a play style perspective, in the sense of you're going to lose a lot of your army, to how you play and position things and everything like that. So I definitely am excited to continue work on it. And now another tool has just been added to the equation, and that is with the Cosmic Precision Strat. So with the Cosmic Precision Strat, you target a unit arriving from deep strike, or hyper-phasing ability. So anything you pick up off the table. So not things that are just put in strategic reserve. Keep that in mind. You have to pick them up off the table, or they have to have the deep strike capability. You can set this unit up anywhere within 3 inches horizontally away from enemy models. Now, initially, my mindset was, okay, well, if this unit's coming on hyper-phasing, we can bring it on from a table edge, and it can be 3 inches away. And I'm like, that's good. That's a good ability. I like that. It lets me get around some other stuff, but I'll still have to wait some turns for to be able to get into like turn 3 for strategic reserves, but not a bad ability. Games Workshop came out and said, no, you misunderstood. You misunderstood what we were going with there. You see, the stratagem says you may place that model, the units, anywhere on the battlefield. So for 1 command point, you can take something like the Nightbringer and put him, just deploy him behind a wall on your side of the field. Start there, hanging out, being the Nightbringer. And then the end of your opponent's turn, you pick him up, put him into hyper-phasing, and then you spend a command point, and you place him anywhere on the table 3 inches away from the enemy. Suddenly, the Nightbringer is at your opponent's back door. Suddenly, the Nightbringer just got deployed in your opponent's deployment zone at their back door in the corner of their deployment zone, because the model's base is not that big. So it's your opponent's really going to have to zone out to prevent that from happening. And there he is. Now, he can't charge afterwards. Okay, it's the Nightbringer. It cuts damage in half. He has a 5-up feel no pain. He's got a 4-up invuln. He's going to be a pain in all people's butts to get rid of. And they're going to have to turn their entire army onto him just to try to remove him. And on top of just trying to remove him, he's just going to do work. He still has his gaze of death. And then if they get close enough, if they focus on him, and they're going to have to focus on him, the rest of your army can push that turn. This is huge. And it's not even just the Nightbringer. And that's the thing my brain's trying to wrap around. This is anything. This is Wraiths. This is the Tesseract Vault. I mean, okay, that's not the best option, but this is Wraiths. This is Lich Guard. This is anything in the army. Late game even. I haven't even, those are the targets that I go to first when I'm thinking about this, but I mean, there is going to be combinations of things moving forward with this. It's insane. It's crazy. My brain still has not been able to comprehend how powerful that's going to be, how much that's going to change. And now that completely changes the dynamic of the list building that I'm looking at for the Hypercrypt Legion, which is what I've been working on right now. And initially, I was talking to Lane about it after our game. I was like, I think this is where I'll bring in a Catan. I haven't run him out of the Codex yet. And I think that this will be a time that I bring the Nightbringer around and have him, start doing some work. That's unbelievable. That is unbelievable. I really cannot believe that is just how that works. I'm so happy for it, but I'm just in shock. I figured it was just going to be strategic reserve, which honestly, I mean, that still puts us in the presence of being able to put the Nightbringer on the field turn one and, drop him very, very, very close. But that's still like, now you don't need to even do it that way. You could drop him at center field 3 inches away and make him Gandalf and just go, none shall pass. This is my wall. You're not going to get through this. And takes away one of the biggest weaknesses of Catan's, and that's that 6-inch move. You can pick it up and put it for one command point, put it 3 inches away from the enemy and go, okay, you got one turn to take me down. And if you don't do it, here I come, and start a whooping and a walloping. Have a Technomancer nearby, heal him up. Got a Reanimator walking around behind a building, heal him up. I mean, and then there is some ways I'm considering this as well, that a Reanimator could be, no, because it doesn't time out well, because the Reanimator would trigger at the end of the command phase, so you wouldn't be able to. I was thinking like, oh, you could deep strike the Reanimator down and just have a boosted bubble, but that wouldn't work out that way. Needless to say, this is pretty cool. This is pretty cool, and that is going to greatly, greatly affect how I build and how I'm going to be designing the next version of the Hypercrypt Legion, just based on that one stratagem alone. Cosmic Precision has now gone from a very strong strat to the strat that is going to make Hypercrypt Legion up there on par with the power of Canoptek Court. Is Canoptek Court going to diminish? I think that definitely the power from it has definitely gone down a little bit, because of the fact that now we're looking at not having the not having the devastating wound output from the Immortals. But that's okay. We still have a lot. We still have a lot of firepower. And I mean, there are other units that have dev wounds that we have a lot of which that take, such as the Wraiths, Canoptek Spiders, and things like that. Canoptek Doomstalker still rerolled hit. We still have a crazy, crazy amount of firepower coming out of the Canoptek Court. The Immortals is just, it's now going to have to be something that we consider and think about and move around with. But it's not the nail in a coffin for the Canoptek Court by any stretch of the imagination. The biggest thing is that now the Hypercrypt Legion is probably, it's like someone at Games Workshop is watching my channel and they're like, oh, hey, DJ's working on Hypercrypt Legion here. Let's help him out a bit there. Oh, he's not playing Canoptek Court now. All right, we can go ahead and nerf this strat. Let's boost the Hypercrypt Legion. He's working on that right now. Yeah, let's get him a boost. So I guess like what, next thing you know, I start working on Annihilation Legion. They're going to drop a point cost on all the score packs. I'm not working on that yet. I plan on working on them soon, but not yet. This Hypercrypt Legion's where I'm at, because I didn't think it was going to be as difficult. I thought it was going to be a very easy slap together because I played Grey Knights. I figured I would transition into that very easily and be able to play it very strong. And I mean, I still was able to score very well in my first matchup with Lane, but afterwards I still walked away from that and I was like, that didn't feel, it felt dirty. It felt like a dirty, like it did things. When you have that dice roll that you're like, oh, okay, I just walled 4 6-up invulnerable saves and a unit lived and I scored 9 or 10 points. That's kind of where that felt. Like, scoring 30 points off a Gambit you know, it still feels pseudo dirty. I mean, I've looked at some of the points and it's not that bad considering where I pulled away from, but that mission was very tough on my army. Very, very tough on it. You know, not being able to, I had to hold more in order to score significantly on primary, where a lot of other missions, if I held 2 objectives, I'm scoring at least 10 points. So that was definitely rough. But needless to say, on that one, it was still a lot of other stuff just did not feel super clean. I pick up units and then I end up just putting them down in the corner, and I'm like, man, I got so many resources that I'm not utilizing as well. And then this, well, this now I was curious, saying, oh, well, I could drop this. What can I put in here? Nightbringer is going to be debuting. I cannot not run him. I cannot not take the iconography of death and literally say, where are you? Okay, I'm going to put him here, 3 inches away from your army. And literally at the same time, too, behind a wall, out of line of sight. Because the next turn he moves 6 inches, it's like your opponent goes, oh, okay, I guess I'm going to move all the way away from here. Cool, thank you for the objective marker. And I mean, if that's how it plays, that's pretty awesome. The Hypercrypt Legion definitely looks like something that might be able to do well from double Catan, and that might be the route I go. You know, Transcendent, don't really need him. Void Dragon hits harder, you know? So it definitely is, you know, and then there's the Deceiver as well, especially with the Hypercrypt Legion and how it functions. You know, when you know if you're going first or second, you could move some stuff out of the way. So the Deceiver has some things. So I definitely think the Hypercrypt Legion, like this beautiful little picture of a Catan that they use for the Hypercrypt Legion for their for the image on this page right there, makes a lot of sense now. That was what Games Workshop intended. And that's what we're going to be seeing here soon. All right, I'm rambling. Like I said, now it's probably past 2 in the morning. And I need to go to bed. And also, I think I hear little footsteps upstairs, which means somebody has escaped the cage and is currently running rampant with a title belt. To be fair, there actually is a couple of toy championship belts located around my kids' stuff. So I would not be surprised if I went upstairs and my littlest one, Dylan, actually had a championship belt running around. I'd be very proud of him, actually. It'd be one of my more proud moments as a father. All right, guys. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.